We are live on the YouTube. I don't know how long they're going to let me be live. I have a feeling, I told somebody else tonight, that I have a feeling that a couple of things we might say at some point might get us kicked off the old YouTube, but we'll have to just wait and see. That'll be okay. All right. So a reminder of where we were and what's going on. We are at the point that God is reestablishing culture, essentially. He is literally remaking society from a group of slaves. I mean, he said, Chad, I mean, how indoctrinated were these people that God had to literally like rebuild society from the base level? Imagine if you were in 430 years of slavery, what it must have been like, and your grandfather's grandfather's grandfather was a slave. And literally, we look at it and go, well, it's kind of stupid to say you shouldn't steal or you shouldn't kill, but yet they've been in slavery for 430 years. So cultural norms and things that we take for granted, we can't take for granted. And I would encourage you tonight, like we have the last few nights stressed, please, please, please make sure you do not read this in the mindset of where you sit today. If you're listening to tonight and you're sitting there trying to take the words that I say, that I read primarily out of the Bible, and you try to apply them to modern day thought, you're going to damage the context of the text that we are dealing with. You're not going to get it like you're supposed to. So please put yourself in this frame of mind. You're a slave who has been liberated after 10 plagues, the 10th plague being one that killed masses of people. They actually ran out of graves inside Egypt, if you recall. And now we're at the point that we're standing at the base of a mountain that is shaking and trembling, that shofars are blowing, and that there's a cloud of smoke from the top of the mountain all the way to the heavens, to the rakia. And it's just all the way straight to the top. And we are standing in front of this mountain, and we go there and we're told not to touch it because if we do, we will surely die. And then in the evenings, we go back to our refugee camp, and in our refugee camp, we're literally living in tents along our neighbors. And our neighbor has a really mean ox. Y'all remember that? That mean ox, that it was so mean that God had to make a rule about it. That's how mean that bull was that my neighbor has. And so we are living in a refugee camp. Please make as much as you can port yourself into that tonight. I need you to place yourself into that place. And you're hearing these words in that way. And God reestablishes the Sabbath. And in reestablishing the Sabbath, what we see is that God is reconstituting what he established in the very creation time. And creation was saying, you know, I've created as God this time, and it's taken me 6 days, and now on the seventh day, I am going to rest. And it's called nuach. The Hebrew word is nuach. And then whenever you nuach, you are resting, you are stopping. Shabbat is a common term that we use. Shabbat is a term that you've probably heard. It's a Hebrew term, and that is the day of rest that starts on Friday night and ends on Saturday night. And that is Shabbat as we know it. And God is reconstituting the Sabbath for these people. He's also teaching us how to deal with our enemies. What enemies do we have right now? We had the Amalekites, but what did we do to the Amalekites? We killed every one of them. Then we got enemies within the camp. You know, the rest of the enemies that are among us, you know, the enemies that are aliens and foreigners and people that we have, you know, among us that we don't like. And you say, well, how do you know they don't like each other? Well, they stood before the tent of Moses for days, you know, pleading their case. And finally, Jethro, his father-in-law, came and said, Moses, you can't keep doing this. You're tiring yourself out. You got to appoint elders. And, you know, we talked about it being the first Amway pyramid scheme of, you know, leadership that we saw. And so here we are in that we are at the point that they continue to receive laws. But what I want to do is before we get there to pick up to where we were last week, I want to rewind just a moment and I want to go back to the book of Leviticus. And you're like, oh my gosh, the book of Leviticus. That's like the most boring book in the whole Bible. I want to take just a minute and I want to go to Leviticus for you. And I want you to realize the importance of the Sabbath. Now, we say the Sabbath occurs in a Protestant religion on what day? Sunday. But we've talked clearly that in the Jewish calendar, which is the state that we are reading this as Jewish slaves, freed slaves, Shabbat was on Friday night to Saturday night, which is what we traditionally hold today. And so, would you squish a friend? We had a little friend, a beetle traveling. So, yes. It's sundown Friday evening. It's not a prescribed time as much as it is the calendar of the sun. And so in Leviticus chapter 26, you see this. You shall keep my Sabbaths, and you shall revere my sanctuary. I am Yahweh. I want you to keep Shabbat, and I want you to keep the sanctuary, which in Levitical times, what is the sanctuary? The tabernacle. Okay? This is in Leviticus, so we're after the time. And he says, if you walk in my statutes and you keep my commands and you do them, then I will give you rains in their time. I want you to think for just a moment. If you've lived for 430 years in Egypt, who provides the rains? The Egyptian gods, the sun god. Who provides the fertility of the land? The Egyptian god for the land. Who provides fertility for humans? Heket, the Egyptian god Heket. Do you get what I'm saying here? I'm speaking into a Hebrew mind as God, and listen to, as a Hebrew, I want you to have your mind in that place where you're coming from 430 years of thinking all these other gods provide this stuff, and now you're hearing Elohim Yahweh, the God of the Hebrews, speaking to you, and he says, and I will give you rains in their time, and the land shall give its produce, and the trees of the field shall give their fruit. And you start thinking, this sounds a lot like, like these things are being given to me by this God. And that's what Egypt told me they were being done, but they were by a different God. In verse 5, and for you the threshing season shall overtake the grape harvest. What does that mean? That means basketball season runs straight into football season. For all of you sports fanatics, I hate sports. I can't stand them. But my wife, I asked her, I said, what are you excited about coming up? And she said, football. And I was like, oh yeah, football's coming. That's horrible. I hate football. Facebook just goes to the pits when football gets here. So here we are. And we said, that'll get me kicked off YouTube right there. That alone, what I just did. I'm off of YouTube after that. And so what happens is that this threshing season, your growing seasons are going to actually overtake. You're never going to be without money being harvested. Let me ask you, this is being written in Leviticus. Think about that for a moment. They're in the land of Exodus, and we're fast forwarded through history, okay? And so we're not back to the future, we're ahead. And so we're thinking about all this stuff. And the harvest shall overtake the sowing, and you shall eat your food till you fill, and you shall live securely in your land. You're like, that sounds really, really good if I'm a slave. And I will give peace in the land, and you shall lie down, and there shall not be anybody who makes you afraid. And I will remove harmful animals from the land, and no sword shall pass through your land. That sounds even better. I'm not going to have all these people attacking me. I'm not going to have lions and jackals. In ancient Hebrew times, when it came time for the harvest, they would actually build small huts in the middle of their field, and you as the man would go into that hut, and you would actually guard the field from the animals coming to eat your produce. And you say, Chad, that's not really a big deal, is it? I'm growing watermelons right now with Farmer Doug. And can I tell you how many of our watermelons have been busted open and ate to the rinds by the deer? I get this verse finally. I understand what he's saying. So here they are. They're having to do that kind of stuff. And you shall pursue your enemies, and they shall fall by the sword before you. And I will turn to you, and I will make you fruitful. What is being fruitful here implying? Children. I will give you children. And now what will happen is because of this, the land, and so, and I will turn and make fruit, and I will make you numerous, and I will keep my covenant with you. Verse 10, and you shall eat old grain, and you shall clear away the old before the new. What does that mean? It did it again. Dadgummit. Hold on. Golly. Man alive, why is it doing that? Blah, blah, blah. Give me just a second. Let me think. I want to... All right. Can y'all see this now? Y'all got it now. So sorry. Thank you. Yes, I'm not going to be. I'm going to switch the YouTube over to where they can see just my face, and then we'll deal with that later. And I will turn to you, Leviticus